Hello, viewers. Hello, attendees. Welcome to another episode of Consent Dojo. This is where we practice the small but significant act of having consent, of boundaries, of engaged, collaborative agreement making. And consent seems simple, it ain't easy. And so we're going to be building our consent muscles as we do. And I want you to check out the previous episodes as well because we have lots of good things in there. And today I have the thrill and delight of introducing Andi Grushka and the letters behind the name MSS and LCSW-C. And let me read the official bio here. And he's a licensed clinical social worker, board certified sexologist, and the owner of Gold Pomegranate Psychotherapy. Her work focuses on supporting clients with relational issues while integrating mental, sexual, and spiritual well being. She's a member of Sexual Health Alliance, the National Coalition of Sexual Freedom, Kink Aware Provider, and National Association of Social Workers, and also ASEX certified. So thank you for being here, and I'm very keen on this topic. Uh, and we titled this, interesting title, right? For the Newcomer, Understanding Consent in Subcultures. So we know each other from mental health and various other subcultures, and many of the viewers have been in different subcultures. And uh, would you mind just kind of giving a little definition or a little framing of how you're looking at subcultures, and then we can dive in.
Sure. I am looking at subcultures as groups of people who are interested in things that are not part of the popular culture, right? So, subcultures could be anything from what I'm going to talk about, which is 12-step programs or tattooing, body modification culture. Could also be like anime, other sub interests, right, where people meet, and that could really be the only thing that they have in common is just that interest.
Okay, and oh, and I see many a guest in here. I forgot to go over some of the base the room rules here. Uh, For those of you who are here live, thank you for being here live. And if you have any questions for either of us, please put it in the Q&A. And you are welcome to chat amongst yourselves. There's going to be several links, etc., that'll be in the chat space. And also, as questions come up, Andy and I are going to do our best to talk with each other, God forbid. So we're not going to be paying a lot of attention to the chat and the Q&A, but Mr. Greg will be helping out with that. When reading the questions or the comments, I will not, and Andy, I'm going to ask of you as well, to not use the name. So instead of me saying, oh, Andy asks blah, 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 it'll be somebody asks. And this is in order to protect privacy because we haven't cleared it with you all. So that's a common practice. And this is a conversation. We're not going to cover everything, uh, but if you find yourself wanting more guidance, you can check out Andy or my resources. Now, let's get back to talking about the newcomer and subcultures.
All right. So thank you very much for having me on this show. I love all the talks. And so I'm very, very partial to the ones that help me realize that there's a lot more to learn about consent. And when you first approached me about like possibly coming on and thinking about what I would do, I was like, oh, what would I talk about? Like, because consent is so vast and also so, yeah, it is somewhat overwhelming. But I was reminded that, I've done a lot of traveling this year. I've been really lucky to do that. And actually, I've counted, I've been at 8 conferences this year, 8 of them. Right. And 2 of them were for body modification. The rest were for sexual wellness and mental health.
Mm.
So those are the subcultures I am also a part of, right? And when I was at one of the body modification conferences over the summer, I was talking with people in this round table. It was really wonderful round table about hook suspension and BDSM and issues that might occur within those two subcultures and how conflating them sometimes could be problematic, could not be, right? And a lot of people were raising their hands. And I noticed a lot of people, some were seasoned and some were younger people in the room. And a young person raised their hand and said, have you ever heard of this acronym? It's PRIC. It's personal responsibility and consensual kink. And I felt my body kind of go a little bit. I had a body reaction to it just from how young this person was, right? I didn't know their experience level or anything like that. But what happened is after that person shared, so many other young people shared after about how it was a really great acronym. And nobody had mentioned previous acronyms like safe, saying consensual, or even risk aware consensual kink. And why this mattered to me was that these people were really young. And say you're coming into a space to be a submissive, right? You want to do a good job, and maybe you don't know everything that you're supposed to be doing, and maybe you don't know all of your own boundaries because like you haven't been in those situations enough to say no, right? So to me, I think why I had that reaction was because if you had never been in that space before and all you heard was personal responsibility and consensual kink, you might think that, oh, whatever happens in this place, and if I don't like it, it's my responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I thought that, wow, I've been in a lot of different rooms where I have assumed that I'm supposed to know everything already, just walking in the door, right? But often when we're new in a room, we are very, very vulnerable. So one of the subcultures I have been a part of is AA. And I'll talk about this in just AA terms, but sort of broadly 12-step programs, right? So 12-step programs started with Alcoholics Anonymous. And the first meeting was to have taken place in 1935 in Akron, Ohio, between Bill W. and Dr. Bob. And these were two alcoholics who had been trying in vain various ways, hospitalizations, the church, other ways of getting sober, and they couldn't do it. So they have this meeting and they really enjoy talking to each other. They make a promise. They're going to meet and find other people who have the same affliction, and they're going to meet in a group and they're going to talk about it. And they're going to try to figure out how to come up with ways to stay sober. Right. And so there's lots of trial and error as new things happen. You know, you learn what you like, you learn what you don't like. But there are 12 steps and 12 traditions. The 12 traditions really talk about how to work a community, how to be good in that community. And the 12 steps are more interpersonal, right? The 12 steps are things that you do in order to stay sober. And the way that you work them is you're supposed to have a sponsor. And that sponsor should have at least a year sober, prefer sometimes to have a little bit more sober time, and have had worked these 12 steps thoroughly with another sponsor and have shown like good moral standing in the community in order to work these steps with you. And hopefully, you know, you can glean some meaning out of this step work and this relationship and continue your sobriety, right? And then be able to do this and sponsor other people. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. The issue can come up. Like I said, we're going in there, we're really vulnerable. So imagine how vulnerable you are in a kink space going in, and like you're like, oh, I want to do the right thing, I want to be good, and I don't want anybody to laugh at me. Well, think about going into a 12-step room for the first time. You are, who knows where you're coming from, but most of the time, if you are there, you're usually pretty near the bottom of an emotional yeah, right? And a lot of times, you know, you could be there not because of your own free will, right? It could be court ordered. It could be like your family saying you have to go to meetings or else you can't live here. even if you are there because you want to be there, sometimes you'll ask yourself, do I really want to be there? You're just very vulnerable in this space with a chemical dependency possibly waning and a head full of psychological and emotional stuff going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're trusting people who have more sober time than us to take care of us.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect strangers that don't have any psychological training, right? Maybe they do. Some do, maybe. But in that space, they are just one alcoholic to another alcoholic, right? Trying to peer, right? Peer to peer help one another. Okay. So as humans, all of us have issues. Imagine a room full of people who are dealing with some really, really, really big issues all at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what can happen, obviously doesn't always happen, but what can happen is that the person who is in the place of responsibility, right, the sponsor, or even your friend who is not your sponsor, but who has like a lot of clean time, who is maybe like, helping you through the program, what can happen is that you develop maybe like a dependence on this person, right? And they can notice that. Now, somebody who notices this could maybe tell you about it, work with you on it. It's a natural part of this process. Maybe other people might not tell you that you're growing a dependence, and they may groom you. And this is called 13th stepping. There's no 13th step, right? There's a joke, sort of like a tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, you're new to AA? Cool. Have you ever heard about the 13th step? Come to my house. I'll teach you all about it. Right? Right? It's tacky, but it's true. It's true because that happens more often than not. I couldn't find a lot of studies on this. I was only able to really find one survey of 55 women who did like an online survey talking about their experiences. And within those 55, femme presenting people, I think that all of them had said that they had experienced some form of 13th stepping, either it be coercion or something like that, while newly in the program. And what that can look like is, you're supposed to be so open. You're like really telling people, hey, I messed up in a really big way and I need help. So now everybody knows all these vulnerabilities about you. And they're like, cool, come to coffee, come hang out with us. Let's chat. And this can be so helpful for people who are really, really in need. And it's saved so many lives. And it's really, really good. It's usually that one out of maybe, I don't know, however many people. And often in a group, people do know that there's like one predator that they have to kind of keep newcomers away from, right? That they will get approached and not know. They'll say, sure, I'll go out to coffee with you, right? It's like, that's what we're supposed to do. We're talking about the steps, right? And not realize that it's not really just coffee, right? And so like things can progress from there on, right? That's one of the more innocent things that can happen. So they have rules about women, and women should be sponsors, and men should be sponsors. But what if you're, let's say, not heterosexual or non-binary, right? What if your romantic orientation is different, right? It can be very, very tricky, because when you are healing, when you are grieving, right, things get all mixed up. So where does consent come in that, right? How do you know what your boundaries are when you're just figuring things out, right? And your boundaries may have been all over the place previously. Yeah. And that is a process, a real process. And unfortunately, a lot of times you have to find out what your boundaries are by figuring out what they aren't, right? Yeah. You have
coming up against it. Yeah.
Yeah. So 13th stepping, right? How do we deal with it? How do we know when it happens? Most of the time, people in the group will know. You tell people in the group what is happening and you ask for help. What if you ask for help and people don't believe you? Luckily, in a lot of those groups, you can leave, but that also really hurts the person that came in there for help,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, I wanted to bring light to how wonderful this type of program can be for that look at what are my boundaries, because you're really asked within the steps to figure out what harm you've done, how you've been harmed, and how you can make a reciprocity from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and along with the vulnerability, it's also for some, for many, flattering and um, seemingly validating. And I'll see this in the various sexual subcultures as well. So you have the fresh meat thing.
Yes, and we're talking about power imbalances,
Mm-hmm.
right, so somebody coming into this group new is looking for somebody who has authority in order to help them get where they need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And this might actually be a good segue into another subculture that I have been around since I was 16 years old, which is tattooing. And you and I were talking, Midori, about like the just difference in culture and where we both come from in tattooing, where I started getting tattooed in like somebody's house with a guitar string. Oh my God. Yeah. You want to hear how it was made? I'll tell you. Okay. So you take a guitar string and a tape player, and what we had was just like ink but no tattoo ink. And so ink, cigarette ashes, thickens it up a little bit, makes it a little bit darker so it won't turn into blue. And then you wrap the guitar string around the tape player in like a figure eight, and then and then push play. So it's going right. And then you take an empty pen cap and you loop the pen cap into the guitar string. So I'm going to make this. It's going like this now.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that way you can hold on to the pen tube, right? Kind of tape it a little bit. And then you have this makeshift gun, right? And so that was my first tattoo when I was 16.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. 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 At that time, there weren't a lot of tattoo shops that you could go into unless you were like a biker or
Yeah.
part of that culture, right? Also, I was too young. Then in the mid 90s, right, sort of exploded. Everybody started getting tattoos, but specific kinds of tattoos, right? Armbands, right?
Mm.
Everybody was getting the armband. Pamela Anderson had one, right? It was like a barbed wire. Yes. So everybody was getting those kinds of things, right? Big tribal pieces, right? Just big pieces of black on, right?
And
Interestingly
it was
enough,
still transgressive back then. So,
yes, yes, it was. And then interestingly enough, during that time period, and up to I want to say probably like to mid 2000s, like six, something like that, eight, you could go to a lot of tattoo shops, but if you did not have any other tattoos, they would not tattoo your hands, your neck, or your face. Just like kind of like an ethical code.
mm-hmm. Okay.
But think about that now. Think about with the rise of social media and just how that is so different. I mean, a lot of people are getting their hands, and I'm talking about in the US. A lot of
Yeah.
people are getting their hands tattooed, right? Like a neck tattoo now at like 18 to like 25, and that's not a deal breaker. You can still be employed. That is totally fine. There are lots of people on Instagram who have beautiful nails and like their hands are tattooed, right? So the culture has definitely changed where it's more accessible and women can get tattooed more often. But it didn't used to be like that.
Talk about that part because a lot of folks might not be aware of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it didn't used to be like that. And in fact, as a woman getting tattooed, previous to a lot of tattoo shops being open, well, let's think about who was getting tattooed then. In the States, I'm going to keep this to the States.
Hmm.
In the States, the culture really was popularized by sailors first, and then
Hmm.
it took off in institutions, right? The technique that I just taught you about was found by somebody who was incarcerated. So, right? And that's who was doing tattoos, um, and bikers and people who were specifically counterculture on purpose, right?
Hmm.
Tattoos were not something about like, oh, I'm getting a pretty butterfly, or, like not, my mom and I have a shared tattoo. Like that was not happening. Now it's happening. In order to get tattooed by women, a lot of times you had to know somebody. You had to either be a girlfriend of somebody who was a tattoo artist or friends with friends, right? When I travel in different spaces, being a tattooed person, if I go to certain parts of rural Mexico specifically, this was my experience of being thought of as a woman of the night, right? Because that's who, right? Which, cool, fine. But that's who was tattooed there. And I did not look like a lot of the other people that lived in that area.
Hmm.
Um, what you were talking about being in Japan. So tell me about that. It's a completely different culture.
Very different. So Japan has a long history of tattoos, and it has come and gone and through different social strata. During certain parts of Edo period, it was popular among the man about town, right? So it was like hipster Mr. Handsome of Edo period. And a lot of, apparently more people, men, had tattoos. Also of the indigenous population, like the Ainu, like the Inuit, they had facial tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
But that meant that they were that minority that was really severely, well, brutally murdered and discriminated against. Now, today, tattoos, well, I don't have any tattoos, and I'm one of the rare ones among all my friends that I don't, not a single bit of ink. And I feel transgressive for that now. The
You
reason,
are now.
yeah, right? The reason I don't have any ink is that in Japan, they do not welcome tattooed people in many spaces, including the public baths, the hot springs, because it's associated today with the criminal underground and mafia, the yakuza, uh, and discrimination is actually not illegal in Japan. So they'll just say you're not welcome, all right? And I don't want to not be able to go to the baths. It's such an important part for me
Mm-hmm.
that, okay, fine, no ink, but I will be able to continue to go into various parts of Japan and enjoy the culture as somebody who's a returning Japanese. And that's important to me.
Yes, absolutely. Probably more important than like a little cute butterfly.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm thinking about as a woman before we could decide, right? Like before we could go into a shop and decide what we wanted. I just am now thinking about you didn't choose your tattoos. So you didn't choose your first tattoo. I didn't choose my first tattoo. It was given to me, right? I wanted a tattoo. It was given to me. And that's the story I heard from a lot of women, my age and older who were interested in getting tattooed younger is because, there's gatekeeping happening, right? It's like, this is mostly happening by men. Tattooing is mostly being done by men to other men. And so if I want this done, I am a guest in this space and I have to consent to whatever they put on my body. So that's a piece of it that I thought was pretty interesting now versus then.
Yeah. little segue. I'm going to put this link in the chat. At the San Francisco Public Library right now, there's a fantastic exhibition called what the modern living tattoo traditions, American irezumi and beyond. Irezumi, for folks, it's a Japanese term for tattoo. It literally means put ink in, insert ink. That's what it
Hmm.
means. So, yeah. Okay, so sorry, I just posted that.
Oh,
For those of you in the Bay Area, please check it out.
yeah, that sounds really wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm happy that tattoo culture has changed, right? I mean, I now have my hand tattooed. This was the last thing I got tattooed, actually. So, in my late 40s, which I think shows the generational difference, right? Like, I had my legs and my torso like mostly completely done, and this arm completely done before I had this arm and hand because of a weird generational psychological
Hmm.
thing, right? Right. Limitation.
It's a
Uh,
taboo.
what's that?
A taboo.
Yeah, because of the taboo. And that was still ingrained in me, even though I'm very tattooed, right? Like what is the hand versus everything else? Not much.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm trying to think of how this goes into the next thing I wanted to talk about. There's no good segue, but
Let's just jump in.
let's just jump in.
Oh,
All
wait,
right.
before we do, let me ask those who are here live if they have uh, any questions around. We were so far talked about AA and 12 step, the 13th step. Um, and it was interesting to hear the term grooming, as we've been hearing grooming in other sectors of the news. Uh, and we've also been talking about the change in bodily autonomy and consent, gender and generations in the tattoo subculture, and how it's also different by generation, by time in history, and but also culture, right? So, any thoughts or questions? I've got somebody who wrote, I got my first tat in 86 at 21 years old. Pattern was Celtic knotwork. I knew nobody in the ink industry back then. I never realized that I got lucky to find somebody to do it in their town in Texas. The Montrose, a queer and artist-friendly area since the 1900s.
Oh yeah, I'm fully familiar with the Montrose. I'm a numbers person, so yay, I love it.
Yeah, so if please feel free to pop us questions or comments. Okay, well, then next topic.
Well, weaponizing therapy terminology. I
Mm,
really think that this is like we were talking about before we came on. The holidays can be really, really difficult. And we are forced to be in rooms with people that we might not necessarily like, but we love. So, um, one of the things that I like to do is to look at terminology that's being used and
mm,
see how it has like made its way into the popular vernacular. So, as far as weaponizing therapy terminology goes, gaslighting, right? Everybody's heard the word gaslighting. Merriam-Webster Dictionary chose gaslighting as the 2022 word of the year, which meant that everybody was using it, right? And so, what does it even mean? Where does it come from, right? Do you know where it comes from, Midori?
It's from the movie, right? Originally,
Yeah,
the
it's
the the abusive memory manipulation, the 1940s or 50s.
1938 British play,
Okay.
and then Ingrid Bergman was in the movie adaptation. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. And so the story I think is really interesting, right? Because it's about this woman who is essentially driven mad by her boyfriend. And the reason why it's called gaslight is because in the time which the movie takes place, gaslighting is all in the house. And when you turn on the gas light, let's say it's lit in one room, if you turn it on in another room, the gas light goes down for a minute and then goes up. And each time you turn it on, it goes down and goes up. So the man would leave the house go up into the attic, stomp around looking for treasure, and he'd have the lights turned on. He'd come home and she'd be like, there are people in the attic and the lights are flickering. And he's like, girl, you're a mess. No, that's not happening. But the whole time it's him, right? That's where it comes from. And so I've definitely heard the words gaslighting being used when it's not gaslighting, right?
In the therapeutic context, what does this mean?
So, in the therapeutic context, if somebody said, this guy is gaslighting me or this person is gaslighting me, right? I would ask what was happening. And if they described, I know I have evidence that this thing is happening and they are telling me that it is not, and I feel like I'm going crazy, I would say, yes, this person is gaslighting you.
Can you genericize an example?
Sure. Oh, this will lead into my next one. I love celebrity trivia. Willie Nelson used to not be a nice guy. Okay.
Hmm.
And apparently he used to drink and beat one of his first wives. And she said, I've been seeing you around town with this woman. And he kept denying it. And she's like, I'm seeing you with my own eyes. And he says, are you going to believe what you see or what I tell you? That's gaslighting.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. Now he was pretty direct about it. There's subterfuge with a
Mhm.
lot of this, right?
So
Also, Willie regrets that now.
more subtle variety would be,
Let's see if he were to continue saying, you're not right, you must have mistaken, or that was someone else, or yes it was but that wasn't the situation, or yes it was the situation and it's your fault. Those are all gaslighting.
okay. And how is it being used colloquially?
Goodness, I hear it used so often, right? That's why it was the word of the year, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Colloquially, I would say that people are using it a lot of times. Also, people are using it rightly for subterfuge that they are seeing within like the political sphere when they know something is happening, and yet there are sources telling them that what they see is not actually happening.
Oh, gee, that never happens. Blatantly.
Blatantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're kind of getting gaslit all over the place right now.
Hmm. But in that case, it's also uh, in line with the therapeutic use.
Right.
Yeah. 'Cause,
Exactly.
oh, uh, that wasn't treasonous action. It was a peaceful protest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. And the intent is to make someone not trust themselves,
Hmm.
right? And when you don't trust yourself, it's really hard to have strong boundaries. Speaking of which, Jonah Hill. Okay. So, boundaries, right? What are boundaries? A lot of people have different definitions of them. I would say that a pretty good definition is, they are things that you determine for yourself. They are
Hmm.
limits that you determine for yourself, right? So Jonah Hill famously in 2003 got into some hot water when an ex-girlfriend of his released some text messages, and she accused him of being emotionally abusive and weaponizing therapy speak.
Hmm.
And Jonah Hill had actually made a documentary with his therapist about his treatment. And so having this come out after this documentary came out, right, was an additional blow. But he said things like this. I think this is important. This woman is a swimsuit model, and she shared screenshots and text messages about him saying that she was crossing boundaries, And these were the boundaries. She's a surfer, I'm sorry. No longer posting pictures in bathing suits or sexual pictures, no longer surfing with men, having inappropriate friendships with men, or having friendships with women who are in unstable places from her wild past, right? And if he did, these are crossing his boundaries. And so she released all
Wait,
of
wait,
this.
wait. Run this by. His boundary was her behavior.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Midori, exactly. Yes.
Okay, so
That's,
there was a moment that was like, oh, are these her boundaries that so he's saying if she does X, Y, and Z, it's crossing his boundary, not just he doesn't like it.
right. Right. And because he had done all this work and he's, really in there, like seeing his therapist, really acting like, I'm getting it together, I'm putting the work in, I'm reading the books, right? One is more apt to believe somebody who's really doing the work, like you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. You're going to listen to them in good faith and say, hey, okay, I love you. I'm going to try to work with you on this. But the biggest thing was what you already pointed out. Her boundaries, right, or his boundaries were things that she crossed, and that's not how it works. Our boundaries are limits that we set for ourselves, right? And so what he was doing was showing controlling behavior. And this happens a lot.
And blaming it on her for his disapproval or dislike, discomfort.
Yes. Yes. So I thought it was a really good example of, and then of course, like social media took off with it. And, I'm not on TikTok that much, but a lot of people had a lot of things to say about it on TikTok, which was like discussing what are boundaries, right? And what are types of boundaries. And they're all different kinds. There's physical, there's emotional, there's, the mental, there's like this idea of like containment of internal boundaries. What are you thinking?
Let's take this case, right?
Uh-huh.
So instead of the specific individuals, let's make it into John and Jane,
Okay.
right? John doesn't want Jane to do X, Y, and Z things, have bad friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
She decides to have friends that John doesn't approve. If John says crossing boundaries, that's manipulative gaslighting. But what if John were to say, I don't like you hanging out with this crew, and I don't want them coming to our house?
Yeah, that that's a boundary that John set for himself. I
Hmm.
don't want this crew coming to my house is a boundary, but I don't want you hanging out with this crew is not a boundary. Yeah.
So if John were to say that if you hang out with this crew, I'm breaking up with you.
That sounds like an ultimatum, right?
Right, but it's not a gaslighting.
It is not gaslighting, right? Because there's nothing there that is happening that is being disputed,
Hmm.
right? There's no reality that is being disputed specifically.
So
Yes.
tell me about how the psychobabble, in this case, gaslighting, is being weaponized. You got this case,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and in casual conversations, I do hear gaslighting coming up. And
Yes.
sometimes I'll hear it around difference in opinions.
Ooh.
Like, okay, so the celebrity case is asshole, right? As opposed to somebody trying to use a term that they heard from somewhere that was on TikTok, that was somewhere, and blah, 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 and using gaslighting to mean having different opinions and not liking it.
Huh. I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think people are misusing a lot of these terms because they've become so ubiquitous so quickly that maybe, you know, like words can obviously have several different
Mm.
definitions, right? But I think that the way that they're intended to be used right now, or at least these two, um,
Mhm.
like very much like has one definition. Gaslighting is one thing. It's where you are telling me that the reality I see is not reality and that your reality is reality. And that is so destabilizing.
The terms limits and boundaries, which we've been going over, those are, as you said, uh, differently defined and conceived of, and also used as, like, okay, so say John and Jane again, right? They're having an argument, and uh, one walks out of the house. You're, let's say this time Jane walks out of the house, because Jane says that uh, you're arguing about this thing, you're crossing my boundary.
Mm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
So, like, yeah, just arguing about the thing is not crossing a boundary. But like if she says, hey, I really can't handle this right now. I'm feeling like overwhelmed. Can we talk about this later? Like all the things that you should say, right? When you're having a discussion about like, you know, I can't do this right now. Here's where I'm sort of at capacity, but I'll come back to you. Always I'll come back to you, right? If if that's not respected, right? That is definitely challenging a boundary, right?
See, I'm also trying to think of other uh, John and Jane. Okay, so if having a disagreement around, like, say, politics, right? Um, you say that candidate X is great. You keep trying to tell me candidate X is great. I think candidate X is not great. You are trying to gaslight me.
Because we have a difference of opinion. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right, right, right. And that's not our realities being different. That's having different perspectives, right? And so, like, different perspectives can make a really wonderful relationship. But having an argument because our perspectives are different is how is that helpful?
Yeah, and speaking of politics, I am hearing people who don't want to vote to their own conscience because they don't want to negate their spouse's vote. I've read, heard those things. Um, and in terms of limits and boundaries, I'm trying to think of other examples where it is used in a way that is weaponized. So, are there
I
genericized
mean,
cases?
I I'm really glad and lucky that I grew up in going to goth bars and kink places because I mean when I hear boundaries and limits like that's very very early on I was taught to like check in with my body and what can I do and what can I not do, what do I not want to do, right? Really really early, and just have those as a marker. And I don't think a lot of other people necessarily uh, go into relationships, all relationships having like hard boundaries, right? I think a lot of times people are a little bit more open um, because they want to get to know people, and I think that it's that vulnerability which is so important and also leads us to possible manipulation, right? um, if you know what your hard limits and boundaries are, a lot of times you're less likely to engage in relationships that don't maybe succinctly line up with you. But if you're a little bit more mutable in some of those things, you're going to be in different kinds of relationships with people. You're going to experiment more, you're going to explore more, and that's great, right? But that means that those limits and boundaries are changing long term, not necessarily, yes, not necessarily in that moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, in that scene, I said, these are my limits and boundaries. That's what's happening. But on a continuum, right? I'm evolving. Well,
Mm-hmm.
how can we make that work in conversations not about sex, but about politics, right? Or something. It's just like the thing that I'm leading with is compassion, empathy, and evolving, right?
Now, I get it comes up often in my work with my students and coaching folks. Okay, so Jane says, I know that I'm supposed to know my hard limits. I've gone through the basic negotiation class, and I know the things I like. Maybe they like spanking, they like oral sex, but I don't know what my hard limits are. And there's also this perception that once they state it, that it's permanent.
Ah,
Right.
right.
But on the I don't know because I haven't tried. And how am I supposed to know when I haven't tried?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that campfire analogy of like, leave it better than you found it, right? For people and for discussions, I think is really important in this aspect. If somebody doesn't know because they haven't tried it, then we have to be treating this person with kid gloves, not infantilizing them, right? There's a difference between infantilization and like being really careful with a newcomer.
Mhm. And the 13th step that you were talking about, going back to that, and then the weaponization of therapeutic language. I noticed that in sexual and kink subcultures, there is a weaponization of good practice kink lingo.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Can you
have
say a little bit
presented.
more about that?
Yeah. So, and then that also leads to the kink version of a 13th step, right?
Yeah.
So hearing, and you were giving the example of somebody coming in wanting to bottom or submit, right? And God, I've heard these cases where, again, with Jane, poor Jane, all these things happening to Jane, um, where, oh, I started exploring with kink and I found this person who, usually older white guy, uh, who knows all these things about shibari and is knows the traditional way it's done, and that shibari is always about sex, and women are supposed to be blah 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 blah, and it didn't feel right, but he said this was what it was supposed to be, and we went through the negotiation, and I did my best for uh, staying doing this form that I was taught, and yeah, that.
Yes.
Mhm.
Somebody just posted the words collective narcissism, and I love it because what you are describing is a type, right? The male, right, is a type of idea of a person who is got that really big ego from like I've acquired like a skill set and like possibly like a lower self-esteem that is propelling this need to be seen in the community as big,
Mhm.
right? And so it's really community minded, right? That collective narcissism, right? Like I'm doing this for the community. I'm, so and so who always is here and I volunteer at all of these things, right? But I need you to know that I do these things. Why? Like sometimes it's nice to be acknowledged, but why do you need to be acknowledged in the community for doing all those things? And that is a type of communal narcissist,
Mhm.
right? Right. I've heard collective, I've heard communal as well.
I've been using the term low flying vultures.
Ooh,
Low flying vultures and high flying vultures when
ooh.
I've been advising folks, because that gives a visual that's, I live in California. I see turkey vultures all the time, and
Mm-hmm,
they prey on carrion or, vulnerable things, right? So
mm-hmm.
low flying vultures, as I describe it with my physicality, it's like, here's the cute little person coming in, and low flying vulture comes cruising in immediately, going, hello, I know all the things. I can help you along the way. I can answer all your questions. Never mind them. They do not know the way. As if they're Mandalorian or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so just listen to me. I will steer you right. And just don't pay attention. Come along with me. Swoops in fast, low flying vulture. High flying vulture. Because vultures are not necessarily bad. I'm talking about the birds. I like birds, right? Birds are simply. High flying vulture is the one that hangs, is like hangs back going, "Hi Jane, nice to meet you," and then like watches, and it's like, well, seems all right, okay, right, okay, seems pretty decent, and some small talk, and the high flying vulture is the one that comes in, I don't know, a year or two later, going, "Hey, been seeing you around, we've been talking, I don't know, want to do something."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The visuals on that I find work really well.
I'm thinking about it because I just saw like a real life vulture 2 days ago in Delaware, and it came up to like it was standing. It came up to about like my ribs. They're pretty big. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I love the visuals on that. Yes, that high flying vulture. I think. I mean, would we say that's almost like a nice guy persona, right? Like the person who is your
The,
friend,
the
and women do
mentor.
this too. um it's like they're your friend, they're always there for you, they do nice stuff for you, but it's really always with the intention to like, she'll fall in love with me one day, she'll definitely see it, I'm the one for her.
Yeah, the in the kink and the leather world, I'll see the weaponization of the word mentor.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, so a lingo that gets used as best practice because mentors are oftentimes a good thing. Sometimes designated officially as a mentor, somebody or just somebody who you consider a mentor, but the word hasn't been used. But if somebody comes in, "I am a mentor and you should follow me," that's like, ooh, weaponizing that word. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for saying that, because that was also really why I wanted to do this talk, is because I've seen people in these communities who literally use that word and have mentorship programs and have been complained about, and nothing happens.
Yeah. I've had people approach me going, "Will you be my mentor?" And my answer is, "What do you mean by that?"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's all fuzzy and vague often with this it's like a romantic idea. Like, I am not your Yoda. You are not my Luke Skywalker. I am not the abbot in a Buddhist temple. You are not an acolyte. Uh, you want me to tell you some good parties to go to, but that's up to you. Yeah. Oh, somebody listed the
Oh, the Nixium guy.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm really into researching cults, because I really, really like, I'm interested in groupthink, obviously. I'm a harm reductionist. I work with people in 12-step programs, in active addiction, who are working with harm reduction all over the place. And so groupthink is something that I discovered early on in AA, like it's what it means, which is, there's the difference between like group conscience, which is like the good of the group, and then
Mhm.
there's group think, which is we're in this group, we all think this, you need to too. Yeah. So the Nexium guy, what was his name? Keith Raniere. Keith.
Oh, we don't need to remember the name because
We
that's
don't need to, but
more.
I'm gonna read
Yeah,
more about it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Somebody's joking about me doing a Yoda. "Cinch with gusto, you will." You know me too well, Luke. Um, yeah, so the whole mentorship, right? So the gaslighting is psych and mental health words used to describe a negative thing, then applied to a probably and likely not the thing. Uncomfortable, disagreeable, but
Yes.
not that. Mentoring and leadership, community leader, those are things that are supposed to be positive that are used to cover up a negative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is when I'm thinking about the way that those are used, yeah, that's a pretty great breakdown.
Hmm. I I also have the while not a mental health professional, I do find myself getting a little itchy when I hear people using the term "I'm triggered" in a non-ironic kind of way, and actually not a clinical kind of way. And I find it feels like it's diminishing the actual PTSD, CPTSD triggers, as opposed to I don't like it, I'm upset, I'm uncomfortable, I feel awkward, I'm embarrassed, I am all these negative emotions that's distinct from triggered.
Right.
Now,
I I feel worried about that because people do need care who are triggered, right? And who have like chronic PTSD and panic disorders and things like that. They definitely experience a lot of stimuli in different ways, so they can be triggered, right? We
yeah,
need a different word for when somebody is like has like an ice pick of disgustedness like come through them, right? Like that's not triggered, it's something else. It's just like a really really strong emotion. Maybe if you and I can like come up with some colloquial
yeah,
term or a term for it, we'll like make a bunch of money.
yeah. And I can see how the term triggered would be attractive to substitute it, use it as a shorthand to mean that I'm having complicated and uncomfortable feelings and I'm kind of getting pissed off about this situation.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I'm
Mhm.
losing my cool, which is fine. Yeah,
Mhm.
but it's all about good communication.
And yet, when did these terms, okay, we talked about uh, gaslighting, we talked about limits, boundaries, mentorship, and triggered.
Mm-hmm.
These were not words. Well, mentor has been around, but like triggered, gaslighting, limits, boundaries. When did they cross over from the expert field,
Mm-hmm.
right, say mental health field, into general conversational usage?
That's a really good question, especially about gaslight, because I'm not really sure when it came into like popular vernacular. I mean, while it was being used everywhere in 2022, I mean, we've probably heard it be used before. So much has changed with COVID, right? So many people are online. So many people got on social media platforms that they weren't before. And so I think that's how we're seeing a lot of this cross pollination of like, gaslighting's not in the DSM, right? But it describes a mental effect, right? And so how did those things kind of come into the popular, but not who would pick a 1934 movie, right? Like,
Yeah, there had to be, I know that I'd done a little bit of reading on the origin of it, and I just can't recall it. I will try to find it and put it in the resources in once I post this. Uh, but the jumping over from specialty terminology into common vernacular and how it gets diluted, morphed, or changed uh, in a way that's actually not helpful for the people who are actually experiencing it.
right, exactly, exactly.
And
Because it loses its meaning.
okay, and so hard limit, one might experience a hard limit, learn that they have a hard limit because clinically triggered. One might experience and learn about a hard limit because they just find it gross.
Mm-hmm.
These are both hard limits. and both could use the word triggered. This one is not clinical triggered. It's and then the aftercare and how one deals with this and how one discloses the limits and boundaries would also be different.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to say, um, hey, Andy, I am, uh, I have a hard limit around clowns because it triggers me.
I would say Midori, that makes me really sad because I enjoy clowns and clowns in weird ways. But I respect that you told me that. I'm really happy that you told me that. So I am not going to do my clown activities around you.
How would you know, though, that I am using it in, I actually go into a panic attack and dissociate versus I just think they're really creepy and like puts a bucket of cold water on my sexy.
I mean, that's see, this is a really good example, right? Because especially if you're close with somebody, like you can joke around with somebody, you can push somebody's like, like, oh, you don't like cheese? Here's some cheese, like, ew, get the cheese away from me.
Hmm.
That is a little jokey, teasy, maybe between friends. Some people really don't like that, right? Some people would not appreciate that kind of joking whatsoever. But I could see if you had a friendship where that was okay, then it would have to be very, very clear to me as the joking friend what that I want to say the word trigger again, but like what that reaction would be like, right?
Yeah. I've gotten to a point of if I am actually negotiating with somebody using the word trigger, I will actually ask, do you mean this in a clinical sense or do you mean this in an everyday lowercase t kind of way? Because the folks who are using it in a clinical and PTSD term, they know that. And whereas the more pedestrian usage of me, like, what do you mean? And a trigger, it's like, I'm upset. I don't like clowns.
Yes.
So
Yes.
different, which would make a big difference for whether me or the other person consenting, right? How am I going to, how will I trust the person's ability to communicate with me? And is the limit thing that I go right up against? Or is the limit the thing that I stay way the heck away from?
You are describing the tension between this desire for safety in
Hmm.
this unknown
Hmm.
and the risk in trusting someone. And unfortunately, there is always going to be a gap.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I think that knowing that there may always be a gap can prepare us. Like, I mean, again, in kink, aftercare, right? A lot of times we've discussed that already. So I know what I can do for you. But in friendships, right? Like if I've triggered you in a way that like is I want to say subclinical, right? It's more than gross, but it's not like, I need to hand you a lorazepam. Then like basically what I need to do is when you are calm, figure out how to not do that again and let you know that I care about you and that this was an accident, that I went over this or that we went over this, right? Or whatever happened. It can get tricky depending on the people who are involved in this, right? I mean, you have to assume that both people are acting in good faith. And
Hmm.
as we just said at the beginning of this, like, not everybody is.
Low flying vultures.
Oh, I know, right? I know. But you bring a really good point up about how do I know when I'm playing? And I think that a lot of times there may be that point where you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I don't have an issue about clowns actually, but it's always a good
Oh,
example. I actually have a
there's
white leather clown outfit.
what? That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's
So
a new place in Philly that just opened up that's like a whole clown themed bar museum. So, yeah,
next time.
next time. Next.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow. So, and whether it is in kink or generalized dating, what I'm noticing out there is, and I understand the want of this to figure out a system to guarantee emotional and physical safety and guarantee the safety part, but also guarantee a success outcome experience.
Mhm.
And a greater drive than I've ever seen towards consent limits, boundaries, and negotiation to try to nail down perfection. And oh, the gap that you talked about is always going to be there.
Mhm.
And it feels like that's gotten harder for many folks to accept.
Yes,
Mhm.
because then if there's a gap and communication's bad, that's when we can really have some big misunderstandings about intent when harm has happened.
I want to bring this back to the title of the presentation. So, for the newcomer, um, because you and I could talk for hours on this. Um, what I would love to know for those of you who are viewing right now, I'm looking at you as if you can
Mhm.
see me. Those of you who are here live and recording, what's your advice for the newcomers, whether in body modification, in 12 step, in kink, in swinging, whatever?
I would love to hear what other people think as well.
Okay. Ah, let's see. Looking at Yeah, what are some of Andy, some of your you've got somebody new coming around you and saying, "Hey, oh, you're new to this tattooing or kink or whatever."
So for me,
Mm-hmm.
if somebody were coming to me that were new about it, well, I guess I would give an example of like, where on their body are they going to get tattooed, right? And who is going to do it? And why are you getting them to do it? And I think those are like important questions, right? So, and I think that these overlap with what we've been talking about in, you know, uh, kink as well. If you're going to a practitioner of any kind, especially one that's touching your body, I would assume that you would want to know a lot about them. Maybe not necessarily the personal, right? But like enough about their professional, personal, um, ideology and what their aftercare is like, and just reputation in general before you go to them. You would be surprised how many people don't know about the people that they are getting tattooed or pierced or scarred by. They're just looking at their pictures. They're just looking at their pictures. They're just seeing their portfolios. They're
Because they don't know any better that there would be such a difference.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. And they're like, I want this work, and that's great. But like, if you're not in the industry, how are you going to find out about their actual practices? I would say go on forums, but forums can be whatever. Most of the time, you just have to like meet that person and see how you feel about them by meeting them and see the vibe that you get off of them. And this again, if something happens, it's not your fault. I hear a lot of people, even people who have done the research, they like the person, they've had all of the consent conversations about where I want this on my body, how it's going to look, right? They get home, they look at it, they don't like it, right? I've had that happen with friends where they're like, a huge piece is on me and I don't like it, or this piece is crooked, right? And sometimes maybe it's a little crooked or maybe it's whatever, but like in their head, it's really, really big. And so think about this. I consented to this thing and spent a ton of money and have a bunch of pain for all of this stuff to be done to my body. And now I come home and I don't like it. lots of complicated feelings can come up from that, right? I mean, a first one that I could see is like being really mad at the artist,
Hmm.
because that's usually what happens. And I'm sure a bunch of artists have to field stuff about like, I really don't like this, or it's not healing well, or whatever, right? So that's a really tricky one. I consented to this. I saw the thing. It looks like it looked on the thing, but I don't like it.
Hmm. And the kink equivalent is uh, we negotiated and I asked for these things, and then I didn't like the experience. It wasn't fun.
Mm-hmm. I didn't like the experience. It wasn't fun. I even heard like some personalities like suggest that things maybe went further than they actually did if they felt uncomfortable, right? Like embellishment of something that actually did happen, but like embellishing the tone or embellishing whatever because they're upset and they're feeling like mm, maybe embarrassed,
Mhm.
um,
Regret.
regret. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, One of the things that I tell for newcomers into sexual subcultures is make friends with people you're not gonna fuck and make friends with people who are not your type.
Yes, yes, yeah.
And if I, um, especially for uh, s- uh, with cis guys, I will hear oh, I want to come in, I want to go to a party and I want to find a play partner. I'm like, whoa, slow down. And also with women, cis women, and femme presenting folks as well. But I often find that how do I right now find a partner from the guys? I'm generalizing here. Um,
Yeah, but there's the Justin Lee Miller's latest studies have like a lot of science to back up what you just said.
ooh, which
Yeah,
one?
yeah,
Uh,
the one that he just presented at Shaw with like all of his dating
right.
stuff. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, is
That
men
was
are
rich.
yeah, men were more likely to move a partner in
Hmm.
way quicker than women. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of it is that emotional safety and intimacy that's sort of embedded in the relationship for men.
And I'm also finding, and this comes up in, I'm going to address the Q&A too, of marginalized people, people that do not hold the power in the room to not trust themselves. And so that low-flying vulture becomes the resource,
Yep.
right? Um, so I will, for everyone, suggest when you go to a party, go with the objective of making a friend and go with the goal of not playing.
I like that.
Yeah. Uh, and speaking of which, let me read the question here from a viewer. How do biases against women and people of color interrelate with consent? My understanding is that negative biases can make things more unsafe. People are still people as much as I want them to be nice, kind, and well-wishing.
Okay. Let's
So the
see.
question, how does the bias against women and people of color interrelate with consent?
I mean, I think you just had a really great example,
Hmm.
right? So let's say like a woman goes into a room with a group of men, or there is you know, a person of color, or even like a religious minority in a room, right? Who feels like they are supposed to be doing something. So they're a guest, right? This isn't normally what they would be doing. And so, yeah, they are going to be looking for other clues to help them fit in,
Hmm.
right? And that energy of not knowing and being lost is obvious to other people,
Yeah. And
right? And
other people who've been there.
yeah. So we have a responsibility as the other people in the room to, you know, not bum rush them and like be like, hey, hi, 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 you know, who are you, right? not overwhelm them, but to say, I noticed you were new in this space. Is there anything I can do for you? Do you want any information? Right. And then kind of like see what they want and judge by what they want. I mean, I've been a new person in spaces, and the onslaught of people coming up to you can be overwhelming. So if you see that happening, don't be a part of it, and maybe just kind of wait out. If people are approaching a newcomer, like, wait it out.
So there's the onslaught of people, but then there's also the opposite of new person comes in, everybody's in their little friend groups, and no one's talking to them.
Yeah,
That
that one
and that
hurts.
leaves them vulnerable to the low-flying vulture.
Yeah, yeah, agreed, agreed, because it's clicky. And so, yeah, they're alone. And
Yeah.
then if that vulture is known and not liked in the group, and nobody else in the group really sees the dynamic, then that poor person is left with that person.
Hmm. Yep. And to the term clicky, though, given that kink and many other subcultures are full of socially awkward people with social anxieties, um, will often huddle,
Mhm.
and not necessarily out of click, but out of like desperate holding on to people you know. And it can appear to be clicky. And so for if the viewers, if you're a new person and you go into a place that seems like people are in these huddles, watch to see if that's coming from a place of judgment. Though you might be going into a place, you're likely to be kind of nervous anyway. You might not even notice this. But sometimes people cluster because they are just as socially awkward uh, or neurodivergent. And sometimes they cluster to access privilege and hierarchy. So that's click. The former is bunch of nerds.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
But can you be a clique of nerds?
Yeah, yeah. But I also want to give, the people that are coming in to not have an immediate, oh, this is clicky, no one's talking to me. That
Yeah.
there's a possibility that the other people are terrified of talking to you.
Yes, which is, I'm one of those people
Yeah.
too. I have really bad social anxiety. Yeah, I just fake
Yeah. And like so many performers, I'm a high functioning introvert. I love having a job.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, so the judgy people, right? The actual clicks and the status seekers, the low flying vultures, uh, and difficult personalities and such. Now, if it's Thanksgiving season, I'm going to bring this back to family and
Yes,
Thanksgiving, that gaslighting, clinical mental health term gaslighting, happens in families.
yes.
Totally happens in families. Jesus, I'm discovering the stuff in my family too. Oh my God. Oh, um, it happens in families. It happens in cultures of origin. And many of us are going back to the places where the bad stuff were imprinted.
Yes.
And difficult personalities, or maybe it's not even the immediate relative, but it's somebody, it's a sister-in-law, it's a brother-in-law, somebody that came into the family, and they're difficult, and you're sitting there over a dry turkey, and it's going to be 4 days in that Airbnb. I'm painting this picture of terror. So if some of you all are having a heart rate increase, take a deep breath. Okay.
Painting a picture of terror. You're right. You
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. You're in that condition. How do
Yeah.
you disengage because you're still stuck at that family event?
Absolutely. Okay, so let's put us there at that table, and let's say we're like eight deep. Okay, and let's say we are like in a place at the table we're probably not going to be able to get out of because we're in like maybe like a stool that we're going to have to like go somewhere. So we're stuck here. Okay. Um, First of all, I always say that preparing for these things. You always think that you're going to be prepared for it, and then something that you are unprepared for comes up. Somebody says one thing, and it's just like your whole plan goes out the door, right? And I wish I could say this in French, but my French is terrible. But it's called the spirit of the stairway. And it is the things that you wish that you said as you were walking down the stairs, right? And I told him, da 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 da, right? Okay. So we need to let that go. We need to let that ego fly out the door for this entire night, because that's what's going to get us in trouble is our ego. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that we're not going to be literally clinically triggered, because we may, but also having the right thing to say to somebody is not protecting us. It's not helping us heal. That's our ego. So I just want to say, taking care of yourself and saying the right thing are probably not the same thing. So a couple of techniques, right, is this is one of my favorites. It's, have you heard of gray rocking? So, okay, gray rocking. It works really, really well for people with cluster B personality disorders. So people who really have low insight into how they affect others, okay, and who have just like an incessant need to be the star of the show. You are very boring. You are a gray rock. Nothing about you is interesting. You don't have to be monosyllabic in your answers, but you are pretty boring. You don't want to give information to the person who may use it against you. And give any information that you want to, but know that it's going to be twisted and used against you. So, like, what is a gray rock? Something hits it, bounces right off. And so they're going to throw attacks at you. They're going to throw jabs at you. The thing is if you are used to reacting, they are going to try to get a reaction out of you.
Okay, let's role play something. Something that I heard from one of my students. Uh, Family of origin that does not approve of her size and weight. Okay,
Oh,
so let's say I'm that person, right? You know, the family that's like, you should lose weight, da 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 da, you're eating too much, no one's gonna want to date you if blah blah blah, right? So if I'm playing her, and let's say you are the mean auntie,
mm-hmm. Ooh, I
yeah.
like being Auntie. Well, I would say, like, if I'm attacking you as mean Auntie, right?
Hmm.
I'm probably, if you're not affected by, like, oh, does that taste good? Are you sure you don't want more? You know, like, here, Midori eats for all of us now, right? Like, if it's things like that, right? Ways to do that are bring levity into the situation, right? Be like, that'd be great. I love pie, right?
Or it could be like, you know, uh, Grandma Becky's pie is so good. How can you all not eat more?
Exactly, exactly. Right. So, what you just did was you made a compliment about somebody else that other people cannot deny. You took the switch from you and put it on the amazing pie that Becky made. And the family probably doesn't have a problem with Becky. So, like, if they say anything bad about the pie, right, they probably won't. They
Yeah.
probably won't. Right. But that was a really good tool. You took the attention off of yourself and you put it on the pie. Right.
Right.
So levity is good. Um, some people get mad at not getting a rise out of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It gets them really angry and they don't know how to handle it. Right. So this is whatever's happening in this family dynamic.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if the person who's trying to get a rise out of you doesn't get one, they're going to do something to get one out of you. Right? They are going to be pushed because their personality cannot handle not getting a rise out of you. So just know that you're going to be affected. It's going to be hard. So what you can do is, like, pretend to be somewhat affected by that low hanging fruit so that it does not continue.
Hmm.
Right?
What would that look like in? this.
If you were to say, okay, let's say that the pie comment, like, you know, didn't really, like, nobody really heard it and people are still focusing on you. Be like, so are you hungry, or you think that you're, you know, done eating, right?
Mhm.
If you said something like, wow, you're hurting my feelings, or, right, I think I might be done now, or something to just allow them to know small that they affected you,
Mhm.
right? It could be over by then.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Wow. Hey, for all y'all watching this, heading out to your family trauma season, I mean holidays, give it a try.
Yeah.
Maybe let us know how it goes.
Because
Uh,
gray rocking can also make people upset too, right? If you're not
yeah,
giving any information and you used to give information and now you're not being forthcoming, that'll make people upset.
an
So,
asshole is an asshole is an asshole.
yes.
Yeah.
So, really, those are techniques to like not have the information about you taken, twisted, and used against you. That's gray walking. That's being low contact. That's, you know, all of the things, using levity, right? That's like feigning hurt when it gets like, you know, pretty early on, in order to stop the cycle that would continue if you know it, you know, continues that way. But people are going to push you.
Yeah.
So, internal boundaries. I think that this is what is so important, because we cannot control our exterior circumstances, right? Unless we just don't go. We could just not go. But if we go, right? Parts of it may be nice, parts of it may not be.
Mhm.
And let's try to pick up on the parts that are nice and those pieces of connection and the family that we do want to see, and let's focus on that. And let's realize that, like, after it's over, you don't have to go for another year.
And have your bestie and your therapist on speed dial.
Speed dial. Yes. Yes, definitely.
And borrowing something from the kink practice is you can pre-plan your aftercare for after the holiday trip.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, it's a, it might be the, yes, I'm going home to the family of origin. I am going to be batshit crazy and stressed out. So, maybe talking to my bestie or talking to my mate. And I am going to need whatever it is I need. I need a day alone. I need to be a spa. I need you to sit there and listen to me bitch for hours.
Yes. Because unfortunately, a lot of us revert back to those people that we were in our family of origin, or whomever we're going to see, in-laws or whatever, right? And there's just certain dynamics that we can't break out of, even if we want to, even if our parents and our families are wonderful and they really want the best for us. There's just still, you know, hiccups that will happen relationally, because that's relationships.
Yep, yep. Oh, God, time flies by.
Oh my
Okay.
goodness.
Yeah. So for those of you who are regulars, you know that I ask all the guests to give us a homework around consent.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, got one for us?
Do I wanted to think about boundaries. I wanted us to think about those interpersonal boundaries and how they change as we've aged, right? And as boundaries change as we age, right? Like, how does that change our behaviors with people? Right? Does that make us a different person? So, like, for example, in my 20s, I was really gregarious. I would have been friends with everybody. I used to give people piggyback rides all the time and make up a song for it. Like, I was a very, very, like, happy, big personality, right? It's probably why I have sciatica, lots of piggyback rides. But I'm definitely not that person now, nor should I be, right? But I interact with people differently because I've changed, because my boundaries have changed, my limits have changed because of my experiences with people, right?
Mhm.
I am a different person fundamentally. Interacting with me now in my late 40s is very different interacting with me in my 20s,
Mhm.
right? We have the same spirit, but I'm fundamentally changed because I evaluate these boundaries. And I would like everybody to really look at what theirs are and have they changed as they've aged.
Great question. Great question. Yeah. Recently I said no to a party I didn't want to go to. And
I
I
love
think when I
that.
was much younger, I would have made myself go.
I'm still bad about that. I go to all the things.
Um, I'm turning to those who are here live, and if there are uh, questions, comments, words of appreciation, or even something, this is my favorite question of what is something that you're going to hold on to from our conversation today? So would love to hear from you all if you're able to share that. I know not everyone's on a easy to use keyboard or device.
Yeah, some people
Yeah.
are probably on their phones as well.
Yeah. So, any questions, queries, reflections, something you're going to hold on to from today's conversation, or words of appreciation? And while they're writing that, and speaking of toxic families, uh, okay, I love going to the movies, and I saw a movie that's about chosen family and toxic masculinity in the family of origin.
Ooh, I love it.
Predator. It's the it's the latest Predator movie. What was it? Predator something. I forget what the name was, but it's the latest one. So it's kind of like Fast and Furious meets buddy comedy meets Predator.
Yes.
And and it is also about toxic masculinity in the family of origin and how you come to form a chosen family and how you disengage from that toxic family.
I love that theme. I really love that theme.
Yeah. So if you're into that, I recommend it. Somebody writes, just my perspective, but absolutely backing up the earlier generalization for men. Rushed into kink when I was young and came to the scene. Advice would absolutely be to join third spaces and make friends as much as possible with kink for newcomers. Yes.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we need more third spaces. I think that's also part of the problem right now too, is
Mm-hmm.
that, a lot of the spaces that I was used to, like even like all ages clubs and stuff like that, where like all ages bands would play, like that hasn't existed since like the 90s, right? So there's a lot of stuff that I think in third spaces I was able to do that I don't know how it's happening now, right? I'm sure it's happening. I just don't know how.
Yeah. Oh, somebody asked in the question, vultures, low and high. A little more about this. It's a good mental image, but I forgot which one is which. So the low one, meaning, okay, so you're the bunny or the critter, you're the field mouse on the ground. If they come at you fast, bad. If they're hanging out up there until you're nice and seasoned, likely okay. No guarantees. But the one that comes in fast to like scoop you up the moment you popped out of that hole, maybe it's a gopher. Yeah. The moment you popped out of the hole and they scoop in.
Yep. That's, yep.
And you can actually physically watch these people. They will come into uh within culturally dictated personal space boundary, which of course varies by culture. They will come right in.
It's true. I love a lot of rope practitioners. Love, love, love them. But the stereotype about the older male rope practitioner is on point. And I'm wondering, there should be a study done about like what is it about rope specifically that attracts this particular
Yeah. Okay.
personality?
This is a Midori-ism.
Okay.
Uh, so that particular low-flying vulture you're talking about,
Mhm.
I call that midlife crisis bondage.
Because we know the dude. Because we know this. Okay. Yes.
And I wish He would just get a sports car because it's likely that fewer people are going to get harmed.
Yeah, fewer younger people for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so judgy. Oh my goodness. Let's see. Anything else from those present? Okay. So do your homework, y'all. And consent is simple but not easy. We need to build up our muscles on this every day. And oh, something else just came in. Ah, distract me. Oh, the person said, "Yes, thank you. You light up when you talk about the animals. You could do a whole talk about this and have fun." Yeah, yeah, I like my critters. And you know what? We're animals and we are social animals. And as social animals, navigating how we connect and how we make agreements. Social animals are making consent and boundaries all the time, and we have much to learn from them. It's as if we've kind of forgotten about that. And yeah, we are social animals. Some of us need our alone tree a little more often than not. But yeah, go out and practice your consent skills and agreement making because it all leads to joy making. And oh, uh,
Thank you.
and another writing. Deeply thought provoking takes on kink, language, and consent. Yeah, good.
Is there another question?
No, it seems
Oh
that
no,
that's,
that's it.
yep, that's from the person going, hey, thanks. And good. Thank you so much. And I'll be posting this in my Patreon first. And Andy, I'll be sending you a link, and then it'll be going up onto YouTube. So thank you very much, y'all. And I'm going to sign off for the night. Oh, we're going to be skipping a consent dojo in December because December's kind of busy. And we'll have one starting again in January. And I am hoping to get somebody who specializes in helping kids learning about boundaries and consent, like little kids, and how to be good parents and all of that. So it's an area I'm looking forward to learning about. So thank you, Andy. Thank you for everyone. And
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for joining. I appreciate it.